Hi everyone, I am Elisha Krauss, and this week on the Washington Examiner Newsmaker Series, we're talking to Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Good morning, and thanks so much for being here with us today.
Hi, good to be with you, Alicia.
So, of course, this week we've seen both sides are kind of unhappy because of AG Barr's announcement that he has found no fraud in this election. I wanted to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, well, I think what he said is there's no proof of widespread fraud that would overturn the election, which is fairly consistent, frankly, with what we're seeing. It's important to note, even the Trump campaign, they're not even alleging fraud in their lawsuits. They're alleging basically other issues and attempting to throw out the ballots accordingly. I'm not speaking in the proper exact terms of what their allegations are, but they're not alleging fraud necessarily. But it's really important to note, it doesn't mean there's no fraud. There's over 200 pages of affidavits of allegations of fraud. Now, I think to Barr's point, even if every single one of those was true, it wouldn't be enough to overturn the election. That's something we have to acknowledge. But on the other hand, and I've asked the Justice Department, investigate these things, put the full force of the government behind it. Let's end this once and for all. But what my point throughout all of this has been, we have many states with an election system that is so loose and so unreliable that all of these allegations could be true. And that's a real problem, right? So you can't have this system where it's so unverifiable that anything anybody says, any theory that comes out there could potentially be true. So how could you make it better? Well, you got to limit mail-in voting. There's so many cases. I've heard from so many people like, hey, I got a ballot from somebody who used to live here 2 years ago, right? They could have signed that and turned it in. How are we going to prove that? It's like, how do you prove that illicit drugs are being trafficked into the United States? You actually have to look. You can't just say, well, there's no evidence of it, so we don't see it. No, you actually have to open up cargo containers and look. Okay. The same thing is true with election fraud. In California, as I understand it, like, you don't need an ID to go vote. So how are you going to know if there's even fraud in the first place? And so you have to have an airtight system, right? As I like to put it, the integrity of the election system has to be self-evident, all right? Meaning the process is so airtight that any accusation of fraud can be immediately dismissed because you're like, there's no way that can make it through this airtight process. The problem is, most of these processes are far from airtight. We need to start looking at states like Texas and Florida, large populated states that seem to be able to get it right every single time. And nobody seems to dispute it. And neither side seems to dispute it. And that's really important. It's so important for the sanity of our country because, look, tens of millions of people might be wrong about the election fraud, but right now they believe they're right.
Yeah.
And it's not good enough to say, hey, just shut up. Just shut up. We don't want to listen to you. Investigate it. Prove it to them. There's nothing wrong with that. It costs us nothing. I know it makes some people on the left mad, but there's no harm in actually investigating these things.
Especially after they spent how many years investigating what they thought was a fraudulent election in 2016. I think 2020 has proven to be the year of the conspiracy theory, or the year of, and I think that comes from overall frustration with the way that things have gone. And I think the election, where people's thoughts around COVID and stuff, is just a result of that. And if we can alleviate those fears, then isn't it a good thing to do so?
Yeah, exactly. Again, I just say, simply for the sanity of our country, you have to believe that your vote counts. People are not motivated to go vote if they honestly believe that their vote won't count because it'll be thrown out, or it'll be it'll be canceled out by an illegal vote. And I got to point out to people, in just the presidential primaries, and which were basically the Democrat primaries, 550,000 mail-in ballots were thrown out. 550,000 mail-in ballots were thrown out. That's a shocking number. So why are ballots thrown out? They're thrown out because there's some discrepancy, because the signature doesn't match, whatever it is. So there's only one of two options that are possible here. The election official throwing it out did the right thing, okay? Like, they did the right thing, or they did the wrong thing and they threw out a valid ballot. Neither of these options are good because in the first case, what you're looking at is somebody attempted fraud. So somebody attempted fraud, an election official caught it and they threw it out. In the second case, the election official made a mistake, or the person just screwed up their signature and you just threw out a valid ballot. The point being, why do you even want a system like this? This is a stupid system. Go and vote in person, and then you don't have this problem. If you're unable to vote in person, fine. We can limit mail-in ballots to people who are disabled or senior citizens. This is what we do in Texas, but it's limited. When you expand it the way that these states have expanded it, when you just mail unsolicited ballots out to everybody like they did in Nevada, you get absolute chaos.
In California.
And you get complete distrust in the election. In California too. Yeah. We never trusted California. So but you get complete distrust. I mean, what's happening in Pennsylvania is complete chaos. When you tell election observers they can't come to within 20 feet of this is crazy. What's the point of this? It only creates distrust and suspicion. And even if there was no fraud taking place, how are you going to prove that? The election, the process itself is not verifiable, and that's what's causing all this chaos. We have to fix it. This has got to be a #1 priority for Congress and for everybody at every level of government, especially at the state level, because that's where this stuff gets fixed. Voter ID, limited mail-in ballots, and I would add a third option. This is coming out of the bipartisan Federal Election Commission in 2005. The registration systems need to be able to talk to each other. So maybe that just means federal funding towards states and a mandate that all of these registration systems can talk to each other so that people are not registered in different places, that these systems can talk to immigration services. So we know you're an illegal immigrant, you can't be here. Or you're not a citizen, you can't be voting. I mean, this should be a simple thing. Right now, it is not. And that's insane. That's insane in the year 2020, in the greatest country that the world has ever known, that we don't have that simple system.
Yeah. In the last answer you gave, you also talked about chaos and California. Those words seem to ring true, especially for residents like me here in Los Angeles, where we see the hypocrisy of politicians who are voting to shut things down in the name of saving lives over COVID, while also destroying them and then going out to eat dinner at a fancy restaurant. What are your thoughts, not just here with Sheila Kuehl, who's a councilwoman that voted against outdoor dining being able to continue, but Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Eric Garcetti, Lori Lightfoot, the list goes on and on. Andrew Cuomo is a huge one. I've interviewed Janice Dean before about his horrible cover-up and hypocrisy. What do you think, what's a positive and a negative of this hypocrisy being exposed of politicians this year?
Well, I mean, it's demoralizing because I don't like being proven right about the Democrats. I take no joy in watching California deteriorate. And the California exodus is very real. I've lived there for 10 years, so I have a lot of connections to people in California. This is not a right-wing talking point. This is clear in the data that we see. This is clear anecdotally, and it's you were with the Daily Wire. They all moved. I take no joy in this because these are our fellow Americans. I love California, and I don't know why their politicians want to destroy the state so badly. And it's depressing. It almost seems vindictive. That's kind of the word I've come to use with how these politicians look at small businesses and how they look at the freedoms of people. It almost seems like they do it out of spite. It's almost like they hate you. And it just blows my mind. And here's the saddest thing of it all. I don't know why there's not more rebellion. I encourage openly that businesses and restaurants band together and sue the state. I encourage openly that they disregard these unconstitutional orders.
Religious schools.
I've come to just start saying that out loud.
Yeah.
I think they should not obey this. It is not fair. It is deeply unconstitutional. It is done without due process. It is done by edict. It is not done by a democratic process. And keep in mind, why is it unconstitutional? Because the Constitution demands due process. Fundamentally, that's sort of the constitutional argument. Because I realize that politicians just say, that's unconstitutional, and that's unconstitutional. Why? Because I don't like it. All right. No, there's reasons it's unconstitutional. and it's fundamentally not the purpose of government
Hmm.
to kind of protect you from yourself to such an extraordinary degree. And if it is, then there needs to be very clear and verifiable reasoning for doing so, right? Because people like to say, well, no, it's just like wearing a seatbelt. It's like, no, it's not just like wearing a seatbelt, right? A seatbelt has a very clear cut outcome and sort of a cause and effect relationship.
There's also
The same.
statistics to back it up.
Right. And the same is not true of a restaurant.
Hmm.
It's just not.
Hmm.
The Coronado mayor, since we're talking about California, friend of mine, he was pointing out as these Coronado's obviously a little island near San Diego.
Beautiful spot.
It's nice, I've heard. Yeah. I used
Unless
to live there.
you're
I lived there
going
for
through
10 years,
buds.
so I know it quite well. And he was pointing out, like, look, we have the statistics to show that it's a tiny percentage of spread comes from restaurants. A tiny percent in the single digits. Tiny percentage comes from gyms. We know these. These are facts.
Mhm.
These are indisputable facts.
Mhm.
So given these facts, how do you come to this policy conclusion where you got to close these things down? The reality is, I'll just be honest. The reality is, people are tired of the virus, and so they've just started socializing more. That's true across the country,
Mhm.
and in places where there hasn't been a widespread spike already, they're seeing their spikes. It's like, oh, Texas is spiking again. No, Texas is not spiking again. El Paso is spiking.
Hmm.
Okay, it's smaller spikes other places, but it's regional, and it's important to note that. And our media has done us such an injustice by never contextualizing anything. Our public health officials never contextualize anything. They
Mhm.
never give you all the facts. They just tell you the scariest one. Dr. Fauci does this as well. And it's he I listen. I've come closer and closer to being much more skeptical of Dr. Fauci
Mhm.
simply because of the way he expresses information.
Hmm.
He's been all over the place on schools reopening. I'm glad he finally got to the right place on that.
Yeah.
But he's known all this data forever.
Yeah.
And there's no reason to hide it. I guess waver on this issue all this time. And if you're going to talk about something being dangerous, give us the probability, give us the context behind it. Tell us who has died and what conditions they had.
Mhm.
Give us more information. Don't treat us like we're dumb kids.
Yeah.
People with some respect, treat them like they're able to protect themselves and able to make rational choices. Especially after we've been living with it for 8 months. I give everybody a little bit more leeway in the first month of the virus, but now we need to be in open rebellion against these horrible unconstitutional edicts.
Well, I tweeted the other day that if people know of open LA restaurants that are defying the order, to let me know, because the Krauss house, all 6 of us will load up in the car and go out to dinner. Moving on to, thankfully, we've been able to flip some seats here in California, and Republicans did very well. You're going to be welcoming some new colleagues in the House, and I saw a teaser video this week referencing Georgia. Of course, some important runoff elections happening there. Are you headed down to Georgia, and what do you plan on doing?
I am. I'll be there this weekend. I don't know what I'm doing. It's difficult to get the schedule set up. But I should have the schedule out on my Instagram and social media for Saturday soon. I know I'll be in Savannah from 2 to 4 with doing an event with 9 Line Apparel out there. We're selling stuff. We're signing books. It's just we'll be there. But Saturday I'm doing a bus tour with the senators. We'll be in Georgia Saturday. I will tell everybody where and when I know.
Yeah.
Probably try and be back the weekend after, and again later this month. So I've fully dedicated to Georgia. The Senate seats are everything right now. So this is what I tell people. Look, most people don't know what's been passed out of the House the last 2 years. If you want to get a really solid understanding of the Democrat agenda, an agenda that they all agree on, okay? And we know this because they've all voted it out of the House. And so these are things like taxpayer-funded political campaign ads. These are things like job-killing $15 minimum wages. These are things like ending independent contracting. You guys in California know all about that. These are things like blanket amnesty for illegal immigration. They called it a DREAM Act, like it was only for dreamers, but guess what they did? They redefined dreamer to mean everyone. right? Like they said, hey, well, there's no age requirements and it doesn't matter when you came into the country. Well, guess what? That's every single illegal immigrant. So it's things like that. They all voted on this. So I know that they all agree with it. And if they take the Senate, guess what? Now they get the Senate to pass that through and this stuff becomes law. So these 2 seats are everything. We're going to fight like hell for them. We're going to be down there. We're going to explain to people why it's so important. I know you're mad about the presidential election. Well, we're adults and we've got to focus on this now. That's my message. Like, I'm not going to coddle you, right? And I know all the rumors out there. We're not voting until what, right? Until what, guys? Like, let's all grow up. We're going to go vote. We're going to go vote because this is important. I appreciate the president understands this. He's planning to be down there this weekend too. So it's everything. We got to do it.
All right.
I'm really excited about the video. You guys are going to love that, by the way. I was like, okay, we got to take what we did last time and we got to amp it up.
Yeah.
That's basically what you're going to see out of this one. And
it's like an Expendables trailer. That's just every time, every video that you're in has that action movie-esque theme. I mean, also, another cool trailer. I don't let my girls pay attention to politics, and we don't really talk about politics in the home because they're all between the ages of 1 and 11. But I did get to show them the video of the Crenshaw Youth Summit that is finally happening on January 31st next year, 2021. I think I'm only bringing 1/4 of the kids and the hubby along. But as everybody knows, everything has been postponed. It's finally happening. Some much bigger names than I are going to be there, like yourself, Ben Shapiro, Megan Kelly, and the Black Rifle Coffee team. Can you tell people how they can get more information about that and potentially be able to attend?
Best way, go to my Instagram. You can also go to CrenshawForCongress.com, but on my Instagram, it's got our link tree, and you'll see a way to apply for the Youth Summit. Right now, we are only taking high school and college age students. Apply, if you're in your 20s, apply anyway. If we end up having space, meaning if COVID restrictions allow us to put more people in the room, we might take you. So you go ahead and apply either way. But just know that we're looking for that age group. It's a full day, Sunday, January the 31st. It's gonna be really cool. That's just some of the speakers. We're gonna continue to announce more speakers as we get closer. It was a ton of fun last year. It's gonna be even better this year. All right, we put a lot of effort into this. It's really exciting, and we're gonna have a lot to talk about.
Yep.
So it'll be great.
Nothing short to talk about. Dan, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate all of your time.